Right, that first video covered basically what the building was, and I highly recommend you go look through some of it if you're a little bit confused about the structure itself and like why I'm using specific measurements as I kind of go through these practices today. But what we'll start with now is kind of looking at this template file and how everything's set up, and then jump into doing the floor plan and the elevations. Or the floor plan and the foundation rather, I'll do in this video, and I'll do the elevations and sections in a separate video. Again, I'm not going to cover every single nitty-gritty detail. These are more just to help you get a little bit more confident about how everything's laid out and get ready to finalize everything. So you'll need to download this template file in order to get a lot of the layers and kind of the paper space set up to make your drawing a little bit easier. So I'm just going to click on same window. I found it doesn't matter. Now, if you haven't ever opened AutoCAD on the computer you're currently using or on your laptop, this file will not just, you can't just click on this and immediately open up a new AutoCAD file. What you'll have to do is go into AutoCAD and say you want to do a new drawing, which is this up here. And then instead of looking at through their templates, I'm just going to go to my desktop, go to my name, go to downloads. I could have also come here and done a look in and done like to my name. But I'll just have to start a new file through this way. If I've never opened AutoCAD before, if you have opened AutoCAD before, it most likely will recognize this as an AutoCAD file, and you can just click on it and it'll just launch a brand new drawing. So right now I have two brand new drawings with this template open here. We can see it's drawing 1 and drawing 2. Up here in my file type, it just says drawing 2 DWG. So while I opened a DWT, a template file, all a template does, it makes a brand new drawing file, but with a lot of the settings from that template already set up. So I'm just going to close out of one of these, but I am going to keep over here my finished product open, because during our demos today, I will be going back and forth quite a bit between these two tabs here. So in the template file, a couple of things have already been set up for us. One key thing of note is that our units, so if I type in units, we can see that my units are already set to architectural. I already have a precision set. So in our first CAD practice, we had to set up units. The template file already set our units up. And we also have quite a few layers pre-built in. So we can see little demos of those layers over here. But if we look at our layer dropdown, we have our annotation layers, or all of these are architectural based layers, which is what that A is referring to. But we have A annotation. This one's meant just for text and symbols. We have an anno def point. This is a layer that doesn't print out. So this is anything that we can do our guideline work in. If you don't like the peach color, you can change the color of this layer. That's the color I kind of prefer to have it in. And then we have another annotation layer, but this one is for dimensions or measurements. We have annotation patterns. So this is for hatch patterns. And we also have annotation poche. So this is for solid hatches. And you'll see that there is a very tiny difference between the two grays, and that's going to have a huge impact on how it prints in that final step. So make sure you're paying attention to what layer that's in. We also have this annotation red line layer, which I have off, frozen, and locked. This is the layer that I use when I go into grade your drawing, so I don't want you using that layer. So please leave it in all of those settings, because especially it's helpful then, because when you try to go get into it, it says you can't. So please don't unlock it. Don't touch anything here. This is to help you out so you don't accidentally do anything in that layer. We have annotation title block, which this is a paperspace based layer, which is already set up for you. We have annotation viewport, which is another paperspace layer that's been set up for you. This is a non-plotting layer, or kind of like a guideline layer, much like our def point layer here. Then we have these A lines, line 1 all the way down to line 6. And so these were described in the instruction sheet. It said like use layer A line, and then there was a blank. And that's just because we'll use them in multiple places, in multiple drawings. But the red line, line 1, is going to be used for our ground line in like our section views and our elevations. It's a very heavy dark line, or it will print very heavy and dark. Line 2 is made for our outlines. It is a heavy line. Line 3 is medium. Line 4, this blue one, is a light medium. Line 5 is a pretty light line. And line 6, this gray one, is going to be our thinnest line weight, and it's for kind of our detail work within our drawing. Then we have a layer for our dashed lines, which again are to show things that are below. We have a layer for our grid lines or center lines, which help show symmetry. And then we have a line hidden, which again is for things that are above and behind. And the way these layers are set up with, they don't just have a color, which is still pretty significant, but if, for instance, if I go into a line dash, we can see here that my line type has switched to dash, versus if I go into a line grid, we can see that it's now set to a center line. There are still a few scenarios where we may need a line in our drawing, but we don't have a layer specifically set up. And so we can do a couple of property overrides for things like that. We can do that up here when we get to that point. One thing I always like to have open though when I'm using AutoCAD is the properties bar. So I'm going to type in the command prop for properties and then just either hit enter or click on that. When you first open the properties bar, it's usually hanging out around here, and you can just click and drag that, and I like to just have it kind of seated into the side of my screen. It has a lot of really helpful information on it, and especially if you wanted to practice for the certification exams within Revit, all of your within AutoCAD, excuse me, all of your answers come from the properties bar. Last couple of things that have been set up for us too in this template is we have some blocks available, particularly related to our windows. So we have a double hung window in elevation, a double hung window in plan, a double hung window in section, all provided here. Granted, we may have to flip some of them around to fit into our floor plan and to our section views, but you do not have to go draw these out manually or go find them on the internet because they have been provided to you. You can either copy paste them or use the copy command from here, or if we come here to insert a block, we can see, if I scroll down, we have the window, the plan, and the section. We have several annotations provided for us. So a north arrow, room labels, elevation tag, section tag. These can be copied and moved into our drawings. That'll be explained in a later video of how to do that, because I usually save a step like that towards the end. And we also have a paperspace area set up for us. So we have in here a paperspace that already has a title block. There's a few things we'll need to change in there, but again, that'll be kind of one of our final steps. And it has in here this viewport into model space. So essentially we're going to draw everything in that black area in model space, and then when we're all ready to finalize everything, we'll bring it onto this paper, we'll scale it, we'll set it up to print, and then we can print it out. So you don't need to worry about creating that title block or creating any of this. It's been provided in the template for you. All right. And with that, I think we can jump into starting with our floor plan. So again, from our set of drawings and from our instructions, we know that all of our floor plan measurements are coming from this face of stud. So that's going to be the really important factor when I start setting up my floor plan, is to make sure that I'm taking all of my measurements from the face of the stud. So I'm going to jump into AutoCAD and I'm going to pick a layer to do this in. You could do it in the layer outline or in the layer detail. Either way, we're going to have to move some things around as we work with our layers, especially as we change or do our offsets. So I'm going to go into, in my case, I'll just do it in line 6. and I'm going to just start drawing out my overall floor plan. So I'm going to use the polyline tool to do this. So that's keyboard shortcut PL, enter, or it's this button here. You could also use the line tool to do it. And I'm going to start anywhere on my drawing. I just need to pick somewhere to start. So I'm going to click to start. I'm going to move over 24 feet. And keep in mind, you do need to put that foot mark. If I just only did 24, it would think 24 inches. Enter. And then my building in this direction goes up 12 feet. Enter. And then for my instructions, I have that 14-foot deck. So that's 14 feet. Enter. I'll go up 6 foot. Enter. And then I could either type to go over 10 feet, or I can hover over that point. As long as I don't click on it, I can move it. And then I can either click on my snap to connect or C, enter to close it. So essentially all I've done is I've just made a box for the overall outline of where the studs are. Now, though, I have to offset in for my stud thickness, in again for my drywall thickness, out for my sheathing, out for my siding. And if, which I don't believe I have it, no, I still have it open, it's just on a different screen. So I'll plop it over here. If we look at the instructions, our outside or our exterior walls again are made of that 1x6 siding, 1/2 inch sheathing, a 2x6 stud, 1/2 inch gypsum wallboard. And our vertical siding is actually 3/4 of an inch thick, and our sheathing is actually, or excuse me, our stud is actually 5.5. So next, I'm going to take this, and one of the reasons why I did it in polyline was that it would make it easier to do this offset, is I'm going to take this wall, I'm going to use the offset tool, so O, enter, or this button here. For my distance, I'm going to leave it set as through, so I'll just hit enter again. I'll click, and I'm going to bring it in 5.5, so 5.5, enter. I'm going to bring it in again, a 1/2 inch, so 0.5, enter. Then I'm going to go back to my original line, and I'm going to bring that out a 1/2 inch for my sheathing, and I'm going to bring that out 3/4 of an inch, or 0.75, for my siding. So what I've done is put all of those layers into the building without having to put in a lot of effort. And let me just make a copy of this over to the side here. If I did this with the line tool, so what I just did real quick without explaining it was I exploded this into separate lines. Well, what's going to happen when I go to offset it, so I'll go offset, enter, I'll leave it set as through, enter, is that as I go to offset this in 5.5, it's only going to do this one. So I'm going to have to then do each wall individually, which is why I kind of prefer doing it this way, because this way is a little bit faster of working. Well, actually, let me undo and bring that back. If you did it as separate lines and you want to put them together, all you've got to do is just highlight all of them and J, enter. And now it's all one piece, and now you can offset it in all as one individual. Or all as one piece, not individual. Next, that I'll want to do is just kind of clean up where this plumbing wall is going to need to go. So I'm just going to use the regular line tool. I'm not going to use polyline for this one. So I'll do L, enter, or I could click up here. And I'm just going to draw lines across. And keep in mind, if you just, since the last command I used was line, if I hit enter after I escaped and finished it, I can just keep going with it. So essentially, I'm just building out this plumbing wall from this point to this point. escape, because it's a 1/2 inch gypsum wallboard, a 2x6, and then another 1/2 inch piece of gypsum wallboard. And what I'm going to do is when I go into the line tool, L, enter, I'm going to hover over that to track it, just so I have less that I need to erase or trim. Next, then I'm going to clean up this connection by just trimming it. So that's TR, enter. I'm going to trim that line out, that. So I just kind of have that nice clean corner. I'll trim that. And on this side, I'll do the same. So I'll trim, I'll trim, I'll trim, trim, trim. So that way I just have nice, neat connections. And you can pause on this screen and go through it. I know I'm going kind of fast, but I figured you could just rewind me and stop me. So I'll hit escape to end that trim tool. And next I'm going to add in where the center of my interior partition wall is going to be going. So I'll do that again with just the line tool. And one thing I really like to do for this one is to use something like midpoints. So let me get rid of that pop-up. If your object snaps aren't on and you don't have midpoint turned on, well, if they aren't on at all, it'll be gray. So make sure you have object snaps on because they're incredibly helpful. And we already used them in some bits. But if I click on that little arrow next to it, I want to make sure midpoint's checked off. Mine is because I already had it turned on from a previous project. But if I start the line tool, so L, enter, essentially I could just go from any of these midpoints. Notice how they're all in the same spot. It doesn't really matter where I necessarily take it from. And I'm just going to draw a line from that midpoint straight up using my polar tracking. And that way I have where the center of that is. I could have measured 12 feet over and drawn a line up, but it gets me the exact same end result. Not necessarily a correct way to do it between measuring 12 foot over or doing this. Same thing, doesn't matter. Next, I'm going to offset this half of the distance of that 2x4 in either direction, because keep in mind this is the center of this stud wall. The center of it is that far away. And then I'm going to offset again out for the gypsum wallboard, out again for the gypsum wallboard. Since this interior wall is a 2x4, we need half of that, or we need half of 3.5. And if you're not good with math, please feel free to break out a calculator for half of 3.5. But it is 1 3/4. See, I'm going to break out a calculator because I don't feel confident about it. 3.5 divided by 2. Yes, it's 1 3/4. I was second guessing myself. So I'm going to go into my drawing. I'm going to use offset, which is keyboard shortcut O, enter, or it's this button up here. For my distance, I'll leave it set as through, enter. I'm going to offset this line over 1.75, enter. I'll take this line again this way, 1.75, enter. And then I'll offset it one more time, 0.5. And so I'm going from these new lines I've made, I'm doing the 1/2 inch on either side. So that's building out my interior partition. I'll hit escape to end the command. What I am going to do is I'm going to keep this line here for the time being, but I want to change its layer. So I'm going to click on it, and either in my layer dropdown, I'm going to switch it to AutoDef, or I could also change it over here. But one reason why I prefer this is that this doesn't give me color cues. It only gives me names, and sometimes I'm a little stupid, so I do like having those color cues. Let's hit escape to end it. The reason why I want to keep this here is because I'll need it later on when I'm doing some dimension stuff, and so just to have something to reference will be handy. Now we're going to clean up these corners with our trim tool. We could Also, in the case of like this corner here, we could use fillet. I wouldn't do it in this scenario. I'll show you in some other cases where it would be more beneficial. But since this line goes all the way across and is this big poly line, I don't think it would really be that great here. So I'm just going to use the trim tool, TR, enter, and get rid of these two little lines there, and these two lines here, and then this stuff that's also in the middle of it. And I'll do the same thing up at the top. I'm just going to cut that through, and since I click off in the abyss and just drag it through, it makes it a little bit easier to just clean up those connections. Lastly then, before I start adding in my features with kind of the windows and doors, is I'm just going to do some layer adjustments and some layer management. So I want the very outside to be in layer 2, line 2, the yellow one. And I want my very inside lines as well to be in line 2. So everything that's sitting inside of here, I want to be in line 6, which is why I chose to do the offset that way. And keep in mind, in some of these, it's going to be in a couple of segments because of the fact that we had to cut and adjust. So I could do multiple ones at once. And then this kind of box in here, and this line, I'll switch to line 2. And this way I've got a big chunk of that floor plan already set and ready to go. Next, I'll start adding in my windows and my doors, or at least just the rough openings for the windows and doors, and then I can add in the features later. So we'll start off with this door, and while I'm doing this door, it would make sense to also add this one in. So as a reminder from the instructions, these doors are 6 feet or 4 feet over, from the face of stud. So that's from this corner of our building, 4 foot over is where the center of this door on the north side sits, as well as this door here on the south side. So what I'm going to do is switch myself over to the depth point layer to start to carve where this door is going to go, so that this way, later on, if I forget to erase a line, it's not going to be a big deal because it's in a layer that doesn't print out. So I'm going to switch my layer from this detail to the A depth, and I'm just going to draw a line, L, enter, from this corner, from the face of stud, click on it, straight over 4 foot, enter, and then I'm going to go just straight down. Further than I need it, but I'll just still use it as a guide. I'll hit escape a couple times, and then I'm going to click on this line, and I'm going to stretch this grip. So I'm going to click on that grip and stretch it out, because at its current length, it wasn't going to be long enough to trim. Now, this line that I just used as a quick way to measure over, I could delete it at this point because I no longer need it. But if I hit Control Z to bring it back, if I left it here, it wouldn't be the end of the world, because again, it's not going to print because it's in this depth point layer. Keep in mind the peach color has no impact on it not printing. It's because it's in this layer that if I go into my layer properties, this layer is set to not print. It could be any color you want. So if you wanted to switch the color, you can switch it. I just find that this color is the one I like. I am going to delete it though, because I would prefer to delete it. But if I didn't, it's okay. Next, what I'm going to do is, since this is where the center of it sits, I'm going to offset that 1.5 feet in either direction. And so I'll go into the offset tool, O, enter. For my distance, I like leaving it set as through, so I'll hit enter. I'm going to click on this line, and I'll bring it this way. I could type it a couple of different ways. So I could do 1.5 with the foot mark, enter, or I could type 1'6", enter, and that gets me the same end result. And then we've gone over in class too a couple of the other different ways we could type it in. There's not necessarily a right way to do it. It's whatever way you want. And once I'm all done offsetting that, I'll hit escape. And then I'm going to go into the trim tool. So that's keyboard shortcut TR, enter. And all I'm going to do is, for me, I'm going to click up in this abyss and just bring it straight down. So I get all of that in one go. Same thing this way. And then I'll get rid of these edges. I'll get rid of this up here. And I'll get rid of these down here. I am going to keep that middle line because I'll switch it into that grid line. So this way I can just kind of borrow it. I'll hit escape. And then I'm going to switch these four. So I'm going to click on them to the outline layer. And then I'm going to take this line, I'm going to switch it to the grid layer. So that way I don't have to bother drawing that again. I could draw it again. It won't be the end of the world, but a little easier. Okay. Next then I'll add in another set of my windows. So I'll do the ones running here. So that is my window that is running. The one on the east, the one on the west. I was pointing to the wrong, this is the west, my cased opening, and then 4 feet down from the face of the stud. So in this case, it would be this side of the plumbing wall, or it's also 4 feet from the face of the stud on the east side. Doesn't really matter which one you kind of define it with. So again, I'm in the depth point layer. I like to kind of add these features in within this layer and then adjust my lines as I need to. I'm going to draw a line, L, enter, from the face of my stud down 4 feet, enter. I'm going to just draw that line straight across further than I need it to go and hit escape. And then click on this line and adjust this a little bit further. Escape again, and then I like to delete these as I go, but since it's in the depth point layer, if I forget, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Then I'm going to do an offset again. So I'll hit O, enter. I like leaving my distances through, so I hit enter again. I select this, and I'm going to go 1.5 feet, and then I'll go down. I could also just do 18, enter, and I get the same end result. I'll hit escape to end the command, and then I'll go into the trim tool. So that's TR, enter. I'm going to trim just from out here straight through. Same thing over here. I have to just kind of stop because I don't want to trim that line I put there. Click in the abyss and then just move my cursor straight through all the things I want to cut. Get rid of that, get rid of that, this. So I'm just kind of going through and cleaning up all this line work. I could have also just, again, redrawn this, but I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm saving time, maybe I'm not. Then I'm going to just click on all of these little edge pieces and adjust them to the line 2 layer. Hit escape to unselect them, and then I'll click on this line and I'll switch it to my grid layer. So that way it's a center line for me already. Next up that I can do is my next kind of opening that I can do is I'll do this window next. Why not? So from the face of the plumbing wall, 2 foot up is where the center of this window sits. So I'll go back into my drawing here. And And I'm still in the depth point layer. I'm going to draw a line. So that's this button up here, or L, enter, from the face of this. So that's this corner here, from the face of the stud, up 2 feet, or 24 inches, is where the center of it sits. And then draw it a little bit further out than I need. Extend this line out. I could also just only extend it out to this part, as long as I just come and adjust this one, because otherwise trim won't work for this. And then I'm going to offset, O, enter, for my distance I like through, enter, down 1.5 feet, up 1.5 feet. Now I can trim. So again, that's this button, or TR, slice through, slice through. I can even just click on that to delete it. If I forget to delete this line, as I mentioned, it's no big deal, but I do kind of like going back and erasing them. And then I'm going to switch these lines to the line 2, the yellow layer. So now I have the rough opening for this window. The last one would be, I've got a window here, or my window bank here, my door, and my other window here. I was thinking about it yesterday, and there were actually a couple ways I could go about doing it. So the way I typically put this window bank in is I usually measure my 6 foot over, and then I offset 3 inches in either direction, and then I do an offset of 3 foot, and offset here of 3 foot. In reality, I could also, because I have this measurement up here, is I could do my 7'9" over, and then offset my 1.5 foot, offset my 1.5 foot, or do 7'9" over, drag that line all the way through, offset 1.5 foot, offset 1.5 foot, and then put in this other window. I guess really it wouldn't make a difference which way we kind of do it. Again, there's just different ways I could approach it. So I'll do it based off of, whoops, that flashed for us for a second, off of this one here, because why not? Put me in paperspace, that's kind of annoying. So sometimes if you have more than one tab open, when you switch, it might put you in a paperspace tab. So that's down here to get back into your model space. So I'm going to draw a line from the face of the stud, which again would be this corner, over 7'9", enter, and I'm going to bring it straight down through my building, hit escape, come back to this line and bring it up, so that way I could use it as a grid later. Click on this depth point and delete it, but it doesn't have to be deleted. I bet you're sick of hearing me say it. And then I'm going to offset this, O, enter, I like my distances through, enter, and I'll bring it over 1.5 feet, which, whoops, I did 1.5 inches, so I'll just Control Z to undo, 1.5 feet, 1.5 feet, and then I'm going to trim it out instead of continuing. What I could also do is then I could do this 6 inches over, do it 3 feet over for my window that sits here, but then I have a lot more extra trimming to do over here. So that's why I'm just going to kind of Control Z, and not do those, because they're just going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt. So I'll hit escape to end the command. I'm going to go into trim, TR. I'm going to clean up all down here. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of it on this side. Clear this opening up. And so a lot of architectural tasks when it comes to AutoCAD get pretty repetitive. Offset and trim are kind of two of our best friends. And we'll also then highlight all these little guys, which I don't want to do too many big sweeping boxes, especially when I click and go this way. So remember, when you click and go to the left, you get this cross selection. We want to be real careful about switching the layers of things we don't want. So I've got all of these little guys. I'm going to switch them to line 2, the yellow layer. And then I'm just going to take this one here and offset this one for the rest of my window. So I'm going to go into offset, O, enter, leave it set as through, enter, click on this guy and bring it over 6 inches, click on this guy and bring it over 3 feet, or 36 inches. Escape to end the command, start the trim tool, TR, enter, and then just slice through that. So this way I don't have to do a bunch of trim and delete to get rid of all that up here. And the nice thing is it's already kind of in the layer I wanted, so I don't have to switch its layer. Hit escape to end the tool, and then I'll switch this over to the grid layer. So right now I have all of my openings ready to go. I just need to actually put doors and windows in them and then start adding in my porch. In a later video, we're going to go over adding in the annotations and such. So if I actually just kind of get rid of the dims and get rid of the anno, we are almost kind of ready to finish up this drawing, which is pretty cool. Let me also change one setting that's wrong on my thing at the moment. On this drawing, I had my scale set too low, so that's why all my lines were kind of coming out a little weird. So for our windows in our plan, we already have this window here that we can use. However, it's not necessarily facing the correct way. It's really only facing the right direction in like this one scenario. In the other case, we need to kind of flip it around so that this way we can put it with the window pane facing inward. And then we also need to flip it on its sides here. So what I would recommend doing is taking this window block, so you can either just click on it or highlight it through a window like that, and using the copy tool, which is located up here, or keyboard shortcut CO, or after you've selected something, you can right click and there's the option to copy it. So we're just going to make a copy of it off to the side. Doesn't really matter where you put it, and hit escape. And then what I want to do is rotate this guy. So I'm going to highlight this one, and then rotate is right up here, or keyboard shortcut RO, or if you click on something, right click, there's a rotate tool. And I'm just going to click anywhere for my base point to grab it by. I just want to have it where it's standing upward. Now, the next thing I'm also going to do is, I guess technically a step that we super don't need to do, but I'm just going to do it right now anyway, is I'm going to make mirror copies of all of these. So I'm going to take this one here, I'm going to highlight it, and then I'm going to use the mirror tool, which is located up here, or keyboard shortcut MI, enter. And when it's asking for the first point of my mirror line, I'm just going to click somewhere in this abyss and then just go straight across, which I didn't go straight. So right now it's asking me, do I want to erase my original? I'm just going to hit escape because I'm going to have to start it again. Select it, MI, enter, click, make sure I'm getting that green line straight across. And I don't want to erase my source because I want to keep these two as references that I can copy. So I'm going to say, no thank you. I'll do the same thing over here, and I'll show you why I often select things before I start mirroring them. Because I can start the mirror tool without selecting an object. Just the difference is if I go into mirror, so MI, enter, the very first thing it prompts me to do is to select my objects, and then I have to hit enter again. And now it's asking me to specify the first point of the mirror line. So I'm going to click to start up here and go straight down. And do I want to erase my source? I'll click no. So just by selecting the object first, you get to bypass that very first part of the command. It's the same thing in move, copy, rotate, mirror, scale, array. They all work in first selecting the objects that you want to modify. Then I'm going to highlight all 4 of these, and I'm going to use the move tool. So that's keyword shortcut M, or right click and it's in that menu. Specify a base point. That's just a point to grab it by. I'm just going to move them so that they're just closer to my building so I can use them a little bit easier. And then I'm going to start placing just the windows into my building where I have windows. So I'm going to pick this guy first. I'm going to right click, copy. The base point here is going to be important because I want to copy it based off of a point that's going to be easy to know where it goes. So I'm going to click this bottom corner so that way I could easily just pop it in to where this 3-foot opening is. And the same thing with this one, I'll just pop it right into that opening. I'll hit escape to end the copy. I'll go onto this one, right click, copy, and you could really pick any of these 4 ends of the magenta. But if I go from this top corner, I just need to make sure that I'm putting it on that corner. So you just need to kind of be aware of where you're grabbing it by and where you want to put it in a scenario like this. Same thing then for my windows on the south. I'll select this one, right click, copy, corner I want to grab it by, where do I want to put it. And if you accidentally put it in the wrong spot, you can just do Control Z. You don't have to end the command, and you can plop it down into the next spot. And then this one here, since copy was the last tool I ever used, I could just hit enter and it'll bring me right back into it. I'll click on that corner. I'll bring it to this corner. These window blocks have already been made to be 3 feet wide, so they should fit in each one of your openings. If they don't fit, then your opening is either not 3 foot wide. If it doesn't fit in this direction where like maybe this is off a little bit, then you've messed something up offsetting your walls because it's also meant to be 7 1/4. So these windows have been made specifically as blocks for this building. Next that we will add, and so I can also take these and I could delete them. If I delete them, I haven't lost them forever. They still are in the insert tab. Here's window and plan, so I still have it, but I'm just going to Control Z to undo erasing them. I'm just going to highlight them all and move them back. So I did a right click, move, and I'm just going to move them back over here for now. Just in case maybe I realize later, oh poopy, I messed a lot up and I need to come back to it. So next, what we'll do is we're going to add in some of this line work related to our doors as well as our cased opening here. So within the door itself, we do have, you can see if I delete this, there is this pat line sitting underneath it. And then we also have the hidden line sitting above it. So, whoops, cancel. I don't want to close out of this drawing. So I'm going to switch my layer over to this ANO pat and draw just a line across these thresholds. And so I did just the L tool, and since line is the last command I'm in, if I just hit enter again, brings me right back into it. Escape to end it. I could also do space bar. So oftentimes when I'm in a scenario like this, I use the space bar to end the command, the space bar to start it back up, space bar to end it, space bar to start it back up. Because I'll have to move my hand less, it makes it a little bit faster to just do those tasks. And then I'm going to switch my layer to the A line hidden and draw lines. So L enter across here, across here. Again, I'm just using enter, enter to get in and out real fast. Or out and in, rather. and then escape to end it. Do we have one of those over here? We sure do. Let me, oh, I also have this set to the wrong size. I was like, why do mine look so weird? There we go. Now they look like the right size. Just ignore me talking for a second. Or me babbling on to myself. So I'll do another line across here and another line across here. Next, we can add in our doors, our regular swing doors and our pocket door. So we'll do our regular doors first. Now, doors themselves, again, this is going to be something that's a typical amount. The thickness of this door is most likely going to be around 1.5 inches. Sometimes for some exterior doors, they might be 2. We'll just make ours 1.5 inches. The length of the door this way, though, is going to be important because the length this way is going to need to be 3 feet. If this is a 3-foot opening, the door itself has to be 3 foot long. So I'm going to switch myself over to a line 4, and I'm going to use the rectangle tool to draw this door. You could definitely use line or polyline to do it. So rectangle is keyboard shortcut REC, or this button right here. And I'm going to select this corner to start my door. I'm going to move it towards this direction, and we'll see that that first text box that's highlighted is the width of the door. So I'm going to do 1.5, not hit enter. Instead, I'm going to hit tab to say 3 foot, enter. So now I have 1.5 inches thick and 3 foot tall door. I could copy this door to up here. So I could take this door, right click, copy, grab it by this point, put it on this point. If I was going to do a copy, it would make sense to do it after I've done the swing. I could also draw another door up here. For the door swing, as I mentioned before, you could do just a port or a 45-degree line connecting that. But in CAD drawings, I kind of prefer an arc, and also arcs are a little bit easier to do in AutoCAD compared to some other software or compared to hand drawings, not other softwares. So I'm going to switch my layer over to line 6, and instead of doing the regular 3-point arc, I'm actually going to click on this little arrow underneath arc, and I'm going to say that I want to do a start end direction arc. So if I use this option, if I click on this option, I'll say that I want to start it at this endpoint, end it at this endpoint, and then I just move my cursor in the direction I want it to go. So 90 degrees, and then I can click to end it. If I delete that, and I go into arc, and I do start end direction, and I start here and end here, it's the same thing, it's just this time I have to go horizontal. Instead of 90, I'm at 180. It does the exact same thing as the end result. Additionally, if you forgot to switch your layer beforehand, you do not have to start over completely. You don't have to delete it and make a new one, because if you did it in the line 4, you can just click on the layer or click on the line you want to change and adjust its layer up here. I could then do the same thing with my door up here, or I could take both of these by clicking on both of them, or if I hit escape, I can do a window around both of them like that, do a cross selection, and I could right click, copy, and I could grab it by this corner or this corner, and I could put it where I want it to be. So sometimes your base point is going to be really important because it's going to determine where you're grabbing it by, where you're putting it. For our pocket door, what we need to do is make sure it's centered on here and has a pocket wide enough to fit that door in comfortably, as well as then deep enough to fit that door. So we could go and look at specific doors to make our measurements and such, but what I'll just do is use the dimension tool real quick to just double check. Pretty sure I made this 2, so I made it 2.5 inches wide, and we'll see too that it is from here to here is 3 foot deep. So that's what we'll do for that opening. For this door itself is 1.5 inches wide and also 3 foot in. The amount that it's inset here doesn't really matter all too much. So let's just start approaching it. I guess we'll make the pocket part first. So I'm going to draw a line. I'll keep myself in the detail one, the detail layer. I'll do a line from this midpoint, since I have that midpoint snap turned on. Even if I didn't, if while I'm in the line tool, I can hold shift and right click and say, show me the midpoint. And I'm going to go 3 foot deep. And then I'm going to go 1.25 inches up for where that one side of the pocket sits. Hit escape to end the command. Go back into the line tool. And I'll go 1.25 inches down. Since I made this whole thing 2.5 in total, I can then figure out half of 2.5. Hopefully you understood why I was doing it that way. I could also then, for my door itself, go and so that would be 3/4, right? Let me do 2.5, because now I don't trust myself with math. Yeah. So the door itself is 1.5 inches wide. So then 3/4 up and down for the thickness of the door. So I could do offset, enter, enter again to do a through, 3/4 up, 3/4 down. And then this can be the start of the rectangle of my door. I could take these 2 lines, move, whoops, I hit the 4 and not enter. Click on them here and just kind of bring it out. I'll usually do sometimes like a foot or so. So I'll just do 12, enter. I can click this middle line and delete it. Draw 2 more lines from here to here. Enter to end the command, enter to get back into it. Another line here to here. And then end the command. And then I'll use the trim tool to cut all of that out there. And we won't need to trim anything down here. Last thing then, it would be to switch this line work here to the line medium. Could I have drawn this pocket and this door different ways? Absolutely. There's a bunch of different ways I could have done it. That is the way that I just approached it this time. Last time, I'm pretty sure I did like a rectangle and then I offset it for the opening and made a couple of different things, but get the same end result. So it doesn't really matter which way you go about doing it. Okay. Next, let me just get rid of that measurement, is we can add in our porch. So we have this hidden line here going from where the very finish is to where the very finish is on this side. That hidden line is essentially referring to the fact that when we would be standing on the porch, we have ceiling, we have that finish sitting above us. So that's why it's hidden, because it's showing something that's above. So I'll go back into my file here. And I'm going to go into my A-line hid, line, enter, or L enter from this corner. And I could either type in how far I want it to go, but keep in mind we do have siding now in play. So it's not going to necessarily be 14. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and it's going to be a little hard to do, but I think I can do it. So I'm going to hover over that very finish. That way I could track to it and I could go straight over, which it is saying it's 14. And I'll go down that 6. Well, I guess true, because it offsetted evenly on this side and this side, so that was dumb of me. So I have those hidden lines there. I now need to put in this little rectangle here that is representing that 1x6 lattice. So again, which I have all of those stuff turned off, if I just turn these annotations on, we have this 1x6 lattice sitting here. Keep in mind that that 1x6 lattice is going to actually be 3/4 of an inch in thickness. And for how long it is, it's going to reach to where the stud face is. So I'm going to draw, I'll hit escape a bunch of times. I'm going to draw from a def point line out from here just to give me a reference of where that rectangle stops. And I'll do another one from here just to give me another reference of where, hold on, no, let me think. Let me use my brain for a second. Because it's going to go out as far. Can I get back into this view? Can I turn this back off? Or turn it back on, apparently. It's going to go, I believe, if we look actually, let me turn the dimensions back on because that will actually show us where it is. This 6x6 post, so maybe we should put their 6x6 in first. Or just kind of make that reference first for that 3/4. Unless I have it go in the full inch. Okay, I understand what I did now. We'll copy that. So delete that, ignore everything I said. So I'm going to have a line as just a reference straight up from there. This is going to, again, help me figure out where that post goes. And then I'm going to draw a line from this stud up 8 1/4. This is going to be an end point to let me know where this corner of this sits. So it's 8 1/4 up. So I'm going to go into my A-line 2 layer, and I'm going to draw a rectangle from that end point of that 8 1/4, and I'm going to make it 5.5 tab 5.5 because it is a 6x6 post, so it's actually the 5.5 by 6, 5.5 by 5.5. I'm going to switch myself over to the A-line light layer, and I'm going to draw a line from each corner of this. So again, I'm just doing that enter to get in and out of it really fast. I'm going to highlight this post, and I'm going to right click, copy, grab it by this top corner to put it into this top corner. For my rectangle of where it meets, so I can also delete these two def point lines, and I can delete this def point line. For the rectangle of the lattice, I'm going to switch myself over to the line medium, or the 4 layer, and I'm going to draw a rectangle from this corner to highlight, but don't click on that stud, straight over to this way. Or if you want to read the measurements real quick, it's 1 1/4 inch by 5 foot 9 1/4. And so now I have that privacy lattice. And my last steps would be to hatch everything. So for my hatches, for my deck, if we look again at the instructions, it says for the floor plan that the north deck hatch pattern should be type line with an angle of 0 and a scale of 48. So any pattern is going to be done in the layer AutoCAD. It's very important because that gray is going to print differently than every other thing in our drawing. So I'm going to go into AutoCAD. I'm going to start the hatch tool, which is keyboard shortcut H, or this button here. I'm going to switch my pattern by clicking on this little arrow. I'm going to switch myself over to line. I'm going to switch my scale to 48, and then I'm going to keep my angle set at 0. I'll click in this area, and I'll click in the door, and I'll hit escape. If you forgot to change your layer, you don't have to delete it. You can click on it, and clicking on it just brings you right back into the hatch menu. So if you needed to change your angle or your scale, or you can click on the word properties and you can switch your layer. What I super don't recommend doing, and I see lots of students do it, is they come up here to this by layer option and they think that they're going to guess the correct layer gray. And again, this gray and this gray are two totally different things when it comes to the printer. So I don't recommend doing that. I recommend coming to the properties and switching it here. So you can still change it after the fact, or you can change it while you're active in the tool. The next thing we'll do in this drawing is add in our solid fill hatch within our walls. So if I get rid of my dimensions, because I want to do those kind of later on in the project or in a different video, we're going to add in this solid fill within all of our walls. And so I'm going to switch my layer to the poche, and then I'm going to go into the hatch tool again. So that's H, enter. But this time for my pattern, I'll click on that little down, and I'm just going to scroll all the way up to the top because I want solid. I'm going to go in here, here, and I'm only doing inside the wall area. One thing to keep in mind is sometimes, or with inside the stud area, sometimes if you're zoomed in too much, the hatch tool is going to say it can't find a closed boundary. So you might need to zoom out to better kind of orient yourself. And so now I have all of that stud area hatched, and I'm ready to move on to my foundation view. You could, if you wanted to, start adding in all of your annotations and stuff, which actually I lied. We're not ready to move on. We need to put in our front porch. So, oops. Almost ready for our foundation. So for our front porch, I've got, again, it's, if we think back to the instructions for the front porch, we have, where's our door? Aha. So there is a 6 foot wide, 4 foot deep porch centered on that door. There are 2 6 foot wide, 1 foot deep steps on the porch as well. So when we're looking at it, the 1 foot would be if we're measuring from here to here. That is 1 foot. However, these blue boxes, if I measure from blue to blue, are 11. And that's because, as I described in the first video, when we have cast in place, when we have solid concrete steps, they have this little bit of toe to it. And so the toe height is just referring to that slant. And if I was to look at this straight from above, if I had that straight down, this is being covered by this face or this edge. So that's what those hidden lines are referring to. And when we get to the video for elevations, I'll show you how to do that. If I go back into my drawing, I need to add in my porch. So I'm going to switch myself over to the A-line light medium, or A-line 4. And I'm going to draw a, how do I want to do it? I'll do it as a polyline. So I'm going to do a polyline from the center of this door, and I'm going to go over 3 foot, enter. I'm going to go down 4 foot, enter. I'm going to go over 6 foot, enter. And then I'm just going to click to end it. I'm not actually going to bother putting that line in there because of the fact that it wouldn't exist in the drawing itself. And then I'm going to see if I can, after I hit escape to end it, I can click on this edge and just stretch it to that point, which I can. So that this way it's only these 3 instead of having that little bit jut out of it. Then I'm going to draw a rectangle from this corner, and I'm going to make it 6 foot wide, tab 11 inches tall. And then I could either use the rectangle tool again, or I could use the copy tool. I'm just going to do another rectangle. So REC from this corner, 6 foot, tab 11 inches. And one thing that could be a problem, in this case it won't be, but if we were trying to laser cut it, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem, is we do have overlapping lines. And so what I mean is here we have a line from this rectangle going across, but this rectangle also has a line sitting there. If I sent this to a laser cutter, it means that it's going to go over that spot twice, which could be a problem. And we also have the same thing going on up here. So one thing I'm going to do is highlight all of these, and I'm going to use a tool called Overkill. And what Overkill does, if we have it ignore colors and layers, is we have it delete. So it highlighted 3 objects and it deleted 7 overlapping lines. So it fixed it so that this is only one line here instead of being those rectangles. Not the end of the world, but just something that I kind of like to do with my layer management. I try to keep as little overlapping lines as possible. Next then, I'll use offset to just bring in that 1 inch on each of these. So if these were still connected rectangles or things like that, we'll have to explode them. So we'll see when I go to try to bring this one in 1 inch, I'm going to run into an issue using offset. So if I go O, enter, for my distance, I'll leave it as through. If I try to offset this in 1 inch, it's bringing it in on all of the sides. So what I'm going to do is highlight it and use the explode tool. So that's X, enter. And what explode does is it separates it into separate lines. So then I can do an offset, enter, leave my distances through, enter, click 1, 1, 1, and then escape to end the command. Click on all these and switch my layer, which, whoops, I'm doing a property override, which actually I'm going to have to do in a little bit. Because I can make them solid gray, or I can make them blue hidden lines, but I don't have a gray hidden line. So what I always recommend doing is picking the color, the correct color here, but then coming over here and doing just a line type override into a hidden one. I don't recommend changing the color, doing a color override, because again, you might not pick the right one. So instead, I did a line type override to change just these 3. They're in the detail layer, but they have a line type of hidden. And now my floor plan is complete. I don't have any of my annotations or dimensions yet, but again, we'll do that in a separate video. So now I'm ready to start doing my foundation view. One thing you'll see when I go into my kind of finalized version of the drawings is I have a lot of these depth point lines. I have these construction lines or these rays that are just going on for infinity. This isn't a requirement in any set of drawings, but what I like about it is it helps me line up where my views are going to be orthographically, which can be pretty helpful for when I'm making like my section view and stuff, is I don't necessarily have to recreate measurements. And I also just like having everything aligned this way. So for that, what I did was I went into my layers and I switched myself over to depth point, and I used the command XL, enter. And what an XL or a construction line can do is I can take it from that point of the stud and I can have it go straight up or straight across. So if I go up and hit enter, it's going up, or click, excuse me, and I can have that one go straight across too. And I can hit escape to end the tool, and I could do the same thing then from like over here if I wanted it going across. I find these construction rays can be pretty helpful for when I'm trying to construct other views based off of this one. So rather than having to kind of measure out where like my section and stuff is going to go, I can have sort of a reference for heights. So rather than measure out the height a second time over here in this section, I can just have that reference of where everything's going to be going. Not a requirement, but I just really like to have all my stuff aligned. So for our foundation view, we're going to do it right above the floor plan. Or again, you could technically put it anywhere in model space. I like to have everything aligned. So I'm going to switch myself over to the layer 2, A-line 2, the yellow one. And I'm going to draw a line, or rather, let me hit escape. I actually want to do this as a polyline. PL, enter. And I'm just going to hover over my ray here of just somewhere where I can get it started, and I'm going to move it afterwards because I'm way too close to the building. And again, I could measure over 24 feet, or I could type in 24, enter. I'm going to go up 12 foot, enter. I'm going to go over 14 foot, enter. I'm going to go up 6 foot, enter. I'm going to go over 10 foot, enter. And then I'm going to click to close it. And I'll hit escape to end the tool. I'm going to highlight all of this at the moment, or just click on it. And I'm going to use the move command, M, enter, so I can move it far away because it was way too close. But this way, it's still sitting on my rays. I like it that way. That's just me being very particular about things, so I guess. Now, what I want to do is I want to offset this in for the thickness of just my foundation wall. So my foundation wall, I'm going to draw it as a typical thickness. So I'm going to make it just 8 inches thick. So I'm going to do O, enter. For my distance, I'll leave it as through, enter. I'll select it, bring it in, 8, enter, and I'll leave it for the time being. What I also want to do is fix this so that way I still have foundation wall coming across here. So just kind of like we did with our plumbing wall, I'm going to do the line command, L, enter, and I could just draw straight across like this, and then use the trim tool to clean it up. Clean up that corner, clean up this corner. I could use a break to change like the line type that's sitting here, but trimming it and just adding another line in is probably the most simplistic way to go. Because again, put me in paperspace. When this building was originally constructed, it was just this 24 by 12. And so this is new foundation wall that was added to it. And so that's why we have this solid blue line here. So I'm going to switch my layer to a line 4, the light medium one, excuse me. Line from that edge to that edge, enter to end it, enter to get back in, and another line here to here, enter to end it. Next, for our foundation, we can add in these dashed lines, which are representing our footing. And our footing is 2 foot wide in total, and it sits centered on the foundation wall. So from the center of this 8-inch foundation wall, 1 foot over is this edge of the footing, 1 foot over is this edge of the footing. It's a little easier to see if I look at it this way, purely because of the fact that this floor joist happens to sit on top of the footing. So if it's 1 foot from middle to edge, middle to this edge, We could also think of it then as if I'm going from here to here and use offset to our advantage in that case. So if the whole wall is 8 inches, then it's 4 inches from middle to edge. So 1 foot minus 4 is 8. So I cannot take this line that already exists and I could offset 8 out based on the ones that I already have in the drawing. So I'm going to go into the offset tool, O, enter. For my distance, I'll leave it set as through. I'm going to take this line that already exists here, like I mentioned, and bring it in 8, enter. I'll take this line, I'll bring it down 8, take this line up 8, this in 8. Yes, there's still some cleanup we have to do. And then I'll take my outside layer and bring it out 8. Hit escape to end the command. And then I can select my new line for my footing, switch it to dashed. I'll use the trim tool, or actually this is a case where I could use fillet pretty well. So I'm going to go into the fillet command, which is F, enter, or this button here, and I'm just going to click on this line, and it'll make a nice neat connection for us. When it comes to fillet, the order you select them doesn't matter, but where you select them does matter. So if I go back into fillet, F, enter, if I clicked on this side and this side, well, that's weird. It's actually not doing it to me. Sometimes it makes it where then it's only going to keep this edge of it, but never mind, it made me into a liar. The other thing too that we could do with fillet, so if I just undo all my fillets, if I do F, enter, we can use this multiple option so that this way I can just, instead of ending and entering the command, I can just keep click, 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 click. And that way it just kind of joins them all and it cleans up that corner for us. So I'll click on those two. I'll switch them over to the A-line dash. And then I'm ready to start adding in some of my floor joists. So for the floor joist, what I'm going to do to start it is I'm going to draw one singular line here to represent one of my floor joists. And then I'm going to use the offset tool to kind of copy it along. There are a couple of ways I could do it as well. I could use the array tool. I could use the copy tool and keep adding 16 as I do it, because you can copy based on specific amounts. But I'm going to just use offset. So I'm going to switch myself over to A line 3, the green one, the medium one, and I'm just going to draw a line, L enter, from the bottom of my foundation to this point right here, because keep in mind we do have that lap that's going to be occurring within the top part of our building. Now this is a solid line, and when we're looking at our drawing, we don't want a solid one. We have a center one here. And so I'm going to click on it and I'm going to do a line type override to make it into a center. And I know this one doesn't even exist in the drawing. It's just more to give me a reference. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to do offset. So O, enter. This time too, if I wanted to, instead of leaving the offset distances through, what I could do is I could type 16, which then is just asking me, okay, which way do you want the 16? And I could just keep clicking on this line and just clicking on the direction I want to bring it. Essentially, that's what it means when you don't do the through. But I kind of just always like doing through and typing in an amount. But in this time, I would be typing 16 a lot, and I don't want to do that. And I'll just end it on that one, even though there is a rim joist here, since that wouldn't be in the final product, I won't even draw it in for this moment. So I'll hit cancel. I'll select this green line, my original one, and delete it. Now, for my joists that are spanning along here. Again, we're going to be over, so if I draw a little line quick from here to here, we're over the thickness of a 2x8, which is that 1.5. So I'll go back into my file here. I'm just going to make a line as a reference, L, enter, from this point over 1.5, and I'll go straight to here. I'll hit escape to end the tool. I want to click on that little line, and this one I do want to make sure I delete because it's not in the depth point layer. Otherwise then I've left a guide that I didn't mean to leave. I'm going to select this one, give it a line type override of a center line, and then I'll use my offset tool again. So I'll do O, enter. We'll see now it no longer is defaulted to through, it's defaulted to 16. So if I hit enter, it'll just automatically keep giving me 16, which is fine because it'll always just keep this 1.5 inches away. I'll click on the line, decide I want to bring it to, click on the line, decide I want to bring it to. I don't believe there is one here. Let me just double check in my drawings. Yep. Okay. Then we're going to bring kind of this double band joist up for what's going on with our porch for this. And ooh, we could have copied from the floor plan, and we'll just add this in ourselves anyway. So let's do, let me figure out what I want to do first. We'll do all of the joist work, the double band joist work here, because it's kind of the most annoying part of it, and then we'll work through it. So this here is a flush 2x8 with the very side of the building. Since that 2x8 is 1.5 thick, that means this from here is 3/4 inch over, and then from here to here is 1.5 inches. It's 2 boards sandwiched together in this case. So I'm going to, nope, that is the file I want to be. It just put me in paperspace again. I'm going to measure over from here 3/4, 0.75, enter, and I'll bring that up, and I'll leave it as a solid. And then I'm going to do offset, enter. This time I am going to come down here and click on this through option or type in the T, enter, and I'll offset that 1.5 inches over. So that way I have these two lines, hit escape. I got to make sure I come in and delete this little guy. So that's why I like to do those guides in the, why can't I think of words today? In the depth point layer, just in case I forget to delete them. I'll got to do the same thing over here. L, enter, down, 0.75, straight across. I still got to put my post here. Enter, or excuse me, offset, enter, leave my distances through, enter, click on this line, bring it down 1.5 inches, and make sure I delete this. So these are just getting ready for all those rim joists. We have another one sitting here. Technically this would be one sitting flush here and another one here. So this should just offset up 1.5. So line up 1.5, straight across. And I know none of these are in center lines, but we can change them all kind of at once rather than do them individually. And then we have these joists spanning across. So it's 1.5 over. We'll have this first one, and then we can just use the offset tool to just keep them going across. So line from this joist 1.5 over, and I'll go straight up until I meet where that band is. Escape to end the tool. Click on that little guy, delete it. Click on this one, and I'm going to stretch its grip up so that way it's the correct length. While I'm here, I'm also going to highlight all these other green lines I did and do a properties override for their line type to be a center, so that way I don't forget to do it later. And then I'll hit escape to unselect them all, and I'll use offset, enter. For my distance, I'll just type in 16 for this time instead of through, and then I can just keep 16 on center all the way across here. Okay, and then we need to add in our post. So, trying to think what would be the most convenient way to do this. I guess if we measure 3/4 of an inch up and then 5.5 over, we'll figure out where this point goes. That seems to me for now, I guess, the easiest way for me to figure it out. So I'm going to switch my layer to outline. I'm sure there's other ways you could be doing it. Some of you maybe are screaming at me through here. Well, actually, it's sitting flush on this line, so that's what we'll do. We'll go line from this point up 3/4 until we get to where that corner is, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle, REC, enter, and then I'll make it 5.5, tab 5.5, enter. And let me highlight everything in this corner. So I'm doing a click from here to here just to get rid of these little bits that I don't need. I'll use the trim tool, TR, or that button there, to clean up, to get rid of all these connections sitting in here. And then I need to add in a little X here as well. So I'm going to switch myself over to line 5, go into the line tool, L, enter from one corner, enter to exit, enter to get back in from the other corner, escape to end the tool. And then we should have just the hatch and our siding to finish. Let me think about that before. Nope, because we also have to add this one in. See, I told you. That's why I need to check. All right. So then for our next piece, we'll do the footing here first. It'll be the easiest. So for the footing, we could do some math, because essentially what we need to do is figure out, it's from the center here to this edge is 1 foot, but we need to figure out what would that be minus 2 3/4, or we could just figure out there that we're going to offset this out 9 1/4 to get a bigger one based off this rectangle I already made. Why does it keep trying to exit out of this? If you didn't draw this as a rectangle, so if you drew this as individual lines, I'll explode mine so it's that way. So it's 4 individual lines. I can click on each 4 of those, and I could use the join tool, J, enter, so that this way it's all one, which will just make offsetting it a lot easier. So I'm going to do offset, enter. Keep in mind my distance right now is set to 16, so I'll either need to type in 9 1/4 at this moment or reset it to through. Click on this and I'll bring it out 9 1/4. Escape, escape, escape. I've got to change this to be the A-line dash, so it's representing the footing sitting underneath here. And then I also have to put in my siding, which is what this hidden line up here, let me just delete that line, is referring to. So this hidden line is referring to the sheathing and siding that's sitting outside of the foundation wall. If we look at it in a section view, we can see here's the edge of our foundation wall. Our framing and everything sits flush with it, but then we have siding and sheathing sitting outside of it. So we have that 1/2 inch plywood, and we have the 3/4 inch siding, or in total 1 1/4 inches. While we absolutely can use offset to do that, one thing to keep in mind is it's only going to offset this box, this exterior box, and we do need it to go full. So one thing I would do if I'm going to offset it, which I guess I could, is O, enter. For my distance, I'll leave it as through, enter. I'll highlight this building, and I'll bring it out 1.25, enter. But now when I'm going to hit escape to end the command, I want to click on this piece that I did offset, and I'm going to first change its line type to A-line hidden, and then I'm going to explode it. So I'm going to, while I have it highlighted, I'm going to do X, enter, and I'm going to take this line here, delete it, take this line here, delete it, and then I'm going to extend these grips out. So I'm going to click on this line, and I'm going to bring it out further than I needed it, and I'm going to take this one and bring it to meet, and then I can bring this one back to meet it. Another thing I could have done is I could have built a rectangle and then put it in place. I could have measured 1 1/4 inches out here, 1 1/4 inches over, and I could have measured then over here. This would also be 1 1/4 inches out, 1 1/4 inches over, and then just connected the dots of a rectangle. But I found this to be a little bit of an easier method. But that's just me and how I wanted to work through it. So last thing would be our hatch in our plan. Or actually, poops, we still got to do a girder, not our last thing. So we'll add our girder in. So this is 3 2x8s just stacked on each other. So we already have this one in the middle. We just need to go 1.5 inches in either direction here. So this is our middle one. If you wanted to double check, you could click on kind of any of these rectangles and a midpoint snap will pop up. But I was able to kind of, I don't know, I could look at that and find that that's the middle, but maybe that's just me. So I'm going to use the offset tool, which is O, enter. I'll leave my distance that is through, enter. And I'm going to click on this guy and bring him 1.5 this way, 1.5 this way. So now we're ready to add our hatch in. So our hatch, if we look at our instructions for the foundation, go to our foundation plan, the foundation hatch is going to be ANSI 37 with an angle of 0 and a scale of 32. Because this is a pattern, we want to be in the pattern layer as well. However, one thing we're going to run into that's going to be super annoying is that all of these center lines are in the way. So just to explain to you before I show you why I want to do this, if I switch my layer over to pat, so I'm in AutoCAD, I go into the hatch tool. Right now, even I won't bother switching my type, because right now essentially I have to go in and click in every one of these areas to hatch, which is going to be a huge pain in the butt to do this. Okay, it's going to take forever. I could do it. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's going to be a pain in the butt to do. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. What's going to make it easier is if I just turn all of these girders off for the time being. So I'm going to go into my layer properties, and I'm going to just turn the light bulb for this line 3 for this green layer and just turn it off. What that's going to allow me to do is while I'm in my layer, AutoCAD, and I go into my hatch tool, it's just going to make it where I just essentially have to click twice instead of clicking 70 times. So I'm going to switch my pattern to ANSI 37. My angle is set to 0. My scale I'll set to 32. And then I can add my hatch in to my foundation. Not in there. I'll hit escape to end the command. And then I can come back to this light bulb and turn my joist back on without having to worry about clicking in between each and every one of them. So it saves quite a bit of time to just do it that way. So at this point, I'm going to end this part of the playlist series or of the videos. In the next ones, we'll go over the elevation views and the section views, and then we'll also do annotations and printing. So also, before we end, please make sure to save your work and name it BSC 1210. I believe underscore, or I think I actually just have it as your last name all caps, your first name lowercase, and then dash CAD. Before you even save, I'll even go double check. Yes, BSC 1210. But we're gonna save it, and I'll see you in the next one because I'm getting hungry.